Today in this video, we're going to be breaking down and taking a look at Brewmaster and how it's been developing over the course of the season. So just really an update. I want to talk about Raid, I'm going to talk about Mythic Plus, I'm going to talk about crafting, stats, talent builds, etc. Trying to recap all the questions that I've been getting and seeing over the last couple weeks. So one of the biggest questions I get is which hero talent should I play? And so I'm going to dissect Raid a little bit. I'm not a huge advocate. I just don't raid a lot. I don't care for Raid. Like I raid to get gear for Mythic Plus. So when it comes to raiding, I really just play whatever I want to play. So if I want to play Master of Harmony for a fight, I'll play Master of Harmony. If I want to play Shado-pan, I'll play Shado-pan. But let's take a look at some of the numbers. So I'm going to be using Archon for this. I'll also take a look over at Warcraft logs that also show a couple examples. But for the most part, Brewmaster in terms of damage is doing significantly well. Better than it has in the last couple seasons where they have been a little bit lower on their damage. Brewmaster's always been known for more of the higher damage tank. So it's nice that that has returned. They are fairly far behind Protection Warrior, but they're as far behind Protection Warrior as they are ahead of the other, tank specs. So Brewmaster, in terms of damage, extraordinarily well. When you look at their hero talents as well, 2 of their hero talents are actually like above pretty much every other tank. So if you are someone who sees that everyone's playing Master of Harmony, but you don't want to be a Tiger Palm bot, don't play Master of Harmony, just play Shado-pan. It is give or take 100k DPS behind Master of Harmony. Why is this important? Well, I don't think your guild's going to wipe to 100k DPS difference on your tank. If you ever wipe to a DPS check, I would address the DPS probably being bad first. Then you can come back and maybe it's like, okay, maybe I'll play Master of Harmony. There are benefits to playing Master of Harmony in certain situations. It's really, really good in single target encounters. Fights like Lumathar, great example. Fractilis, also really good example of like a single target patchwork fight. Other fights, you can definitely make an argument for Shado-pan because there's like maybe some ad cleave that's going on. Maybe there's multiple targets. Lumathar's a little weird because you have to like kill the ads that spawn in phase 1, like the webs, but you also have to like turn your back to the boss, so it doesn't really matter. On Mythic Forge Weaver, as an example, if you're the kind of the echo, this is Mythic specifically, if you're the person tanking the echo out of the group, you're going to miss out on a bit of damage if you're playing Shado-pan, if you're like just off in a corner tanking the mob. So Master of Harmony will actually hit some of the mobs that are nearby from just the range, the ridiculous range on your potential energy and harmonic surge damage. So if you're trying to be optimal, I would say Master of Harmony is probably better, but you're not losing anything for playing Shado-pan. So ultimately what I'm trying to say is play what you want. Brewmaster is also doing extremely good in terms of survivability. Brewmaster's always been like this, despite even ever being bad in a single tier. Because of the inherent nature of stagger, they are so busted when it comes to surviving. Swirl mechanics, tank busters, you never have to worry about having almost any mitigation up. Obviously, using defensives is good, but stagger alone is incredibly impactful. So that's pretty much it for Raid. That's like the main question I get is like, oh man, like do I have to, what should I play with hero talent? Master of Harmony, if you're trying to optimize damage, you can definitely swap between the two, but if you're someone who just loves Shado-pan and you don't care for hitting Tiger Palm spam, then play Shado-pan. The last thing I'll mention is that when we look at the Mythic tank kind of all-star points or overall damage across all regions, Protection Warrior, while it is extremely dominant, you're going to see some of these like top Brewmaster monks, like I recognize seeing Danchi, Relo obviously is going to be up here quite consistently. Brewmaster's extremely competitive, especially in like these pure single target fights. As soon as you start adding extra targets, Thane is just so fucking broken in a lot of these cases where they're going to shine more than Brewmaster will in terms of, even if you go Shado-pan for like Soul Hunters and you're able to like get really good flurry strikes on all these ads, a Thane Warrior in 3 targets right now is just so much better than either of the 2 specs for Brewmaster. But basically, Brewmaster's doing really well. So if you're someone who's still trying to figure out what to play, maybe you're looking for a new guild and you want to like try a new tank or something like that, Brewmaster is fucking awesome. So that is Raid. I am done talking about Raid now for a bit. Let's talk about Mythic Plus. Looking at the Raider IO leaderboards for all of the tanks, we are seeing a meta shift slightly. Now, I did a meta shift or a meta talk video, I think earlier this week or last week. Also, at the time of recording this video, I think Tettle's just posted one. So I'm sure he has some takes there. Also, the meta has shifted a little bit now because people are starting to push more. The race to World First is over. Guilds are pretty deep in Mythic. They have good gear. A lot of people have sent their double crafts now. People have done their farming. So we are seeing a slight shift. Now, my take is that Warrior is, well, it does look like a Warrior meta. It's obviously extremely competitive. Outside of BDK, almost every tank can be played. You're seeing representation from everything on the board, from Guardian Druid, Protection Warrior, Paladin, Brewmaster, and VDH. I think, and this is not Brewmaster related, but I think Prot Warrior is probably the first tank in line to receive nerfs if they're going to do any kind of tuning. Now, ideally, they're going to just bring all the tanks up to Prot Warrior's level, but I believe there's going to be a world where Prot Warrior might see a small nerf to Thane in the coming weeks, which I think will push Paladin more in favor, but we'll see. Coming back to Monk, though, 7 of the top 40 tanks, I believe, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 of the top 40 tanks are Brewmaster, which is really good. This is a good representation, healthy representation. If we move down to the next page, it's going to kind of start to fall off here. Even Yoda's playing his Brew. I'm hoping I can start climbing as well once my group starts pushing again this upcoming weekend. We'll see, though. We got a little bit of farming to do for our healer, who's now 2 weeks behind on gear. But yeah, Brewmaster, very healthy representation. Same question here, though. What hero talent do you play in Mythic Plus? Now, unlike Raid, where you're really seeing a Master of Harmony shine, Shado-pan is still the predominant spec in Mythic Plus. Now, a lot of this comes down to their ability to do AoE damage. Now, we'll come actually back to Murlok. Let's go back to Archon and take a quick look, because I think it shows a better snapshot of the damage Brewmasters are doing. Now, they are being ranked A tier, which I think is fine. Brewmaster, I think, is really strong. It has a lot of niches and benefits to playing it, especially if the person playing it is very good. Protection Warrior, AoE Silence, lots of stops. Protection Paladin, single target silences through Avenger Shield, a lot of damage, group utility, and then same with VDH, kind of all of the above. These tanks are just designed for Mythic Plus. These tanks are not designed for Mythic Plus. So Brewmaster being competitive with these other tanks, very good. Another reason their score is going to be lower is because the representation is lower, and when it averages out, it's taking into account some players who play it really casually. Not super great. If we take a look actually at high keys, though, you're going to see that VDH actually takes a step down, and Brewmaster is still pretty competitive. Now, in terms of max key, Brewmaster's max key at the time of recording this video is 17. But when you look at their damage, they are doing pretty much on par damage with Protection Warrior, and their survivability is probably equally as good, depending on if you're actually good at hitting your buttons and using defensives. When we look at their total damage, being dealt in these higher keys, you can play Master and or Shado-pan pretty much in either key, and the total damage loss on average is probably going to be like 300k. But the thing to keep in mind with this is that you're bringing something very valuable when you play this, which is a little bit of group healing through Harmonic Surge, but more important, you're bringing that really insane single target damage that Shado-pan just sometimes can't do as reliably, because it depends on the cycle of their Wisdom of the Wall buffs during their Weapons of Order window. Now, if you're pulling trash on a boss, if you're doing like 2-target cleave encounters, certain dungeons, Shado-pan's going to shine. But Master of Harmony, it has its niche, and its niche is single target or smaller pulls. So in dungeons like Streets of Wonder, arguably Dawnbreaker, maybe Halls, depending on pull size, Master of Harmony is going to shine in these dungeons. Everywhere else, though, you're able to like pull trash on a boss, big pulls, less bosses, big pulls, less bosses, big pulls, less bosses. Floodgate is big pulls and big bosses with add cleave or like multi-target. You're pulling divers on a boss. You're obviously Big Mama has multiple adds to hit. Do 2-target cleave. So these some dungeons favor Shado-pan way more. Now, realistically, I think the top Brewmasters will just swap between the two builds, whichever is more efficient for their group and for the run that they're in. Most of the time, you can probably just stick to Shado-pan. If you really want to like min-max, so you can swap to Master of Harmony in some of these lower target count instances now. But this totally depends on like your routing and your group and stuff like that. So yeah, Brewmaster in high keys, A tier, I agree with this. I don't think they're better than Prot Paladin and Prot Warrior, but they're very competitive in terms of damage, and a well-played Brewmaster is good. So let's take a look at builds. Now, I love Murlok. I've used the site all the time. I've talked about it in previous videos. I like the site a lot because it aggregates the data of the top 50 Brewmaster monks basically across all of the regions, and it aggregates their data and kind of compiles it and averages it out. So out of the top 50, the average stat weights look like this. Now, I would say this is a really good guideline. You're naturally going to get haste from gear from your tier sets, which you can't really avoid, unfortunate. Your crit and verse definitely should be kind of hitting the third. You want at least like 30 to 33% crits, and then you can use a crit flask, or you're going to be getting it from like trinkets and other sources. And your verse you want to push as close to 30 as possible. Your first diminishing return of versatility will hit at 30% exactly, and critical strike, I think it's like 39. After 39% critical strike, you're going to start seeing diminishing returns where each point of crit is worth 10% less than points below 39%. So you want to start leaning away from crit around that mark. After you get those two stats very high, clearly the next best stat is mastery. Now, the main reason for this, and I'm going to pull a pirate software here in a second, is that when you have 18% mastery versus 20, I'm going to try to like, so here's 18%, then we have 20%. For every stack of elusive brawler, you're going to gain this much mastery. So if you only have 18%, when you have 5 stacks of elusive brawler, your dodge chance will only be 18 or 90%. Now, obviously, this is not taking out into account any other, like Trending Nizao is a perfect example where this fluctuates greatly. And then you can use like 33% as an example. And this is going to come from like having, again, additional sources. So you need, this is 5 stacks. But at 5 stacks of 20, you're going to have exactly 100% chance to dodge, which is good. This is a nice breakpoint. If you have only 3 stacks on the 33%, which happens from like training, you're going to have like a 99%, and that's really good. But when you start to have like this lower amount, this is where your dodges can be a little bit more infrequent. Now, luckily, we're starting to hit these diminishing returns on other stats. So mastery starts to become a little bit more powerful, a little bit stronger to stack. It's a little bit more powerful than having the DR. Like the DR on the verse, the diminishing return, I should say, basically makes that mastery, it ends up being a little bit more powerful. And this is a common trend that we see at the end of every single expansion cycle. Haste will never be good for Brewmaster until they rework us to the point where haste has different modifiers in our kit outside of reduce cooldown on keg smash, but never enough to be significant. So those are stats. Let's talk about the talents. So talents, again, haven't also changed all that much, at least in the class tree. You're still seeing this really standard build. Some players are opting to play Windwalking just for a little bit more movement speed. Some players can play Black Ox Statue. There's a couple of interesting techs you can use to pull mobs and group them up a little bit easier. Mobs have a tendency to not want to cast on totems right away, so if you are pulling casters, you can place down the Ox Statue. Those casters will actually run up to the statue and melee swing it once before casting, and this is a good way to group up a couple of packs. Maybe I'll do a video in the future talking about where to use this, but honestly, I think it's like too min-maxy to really worry about when you can just play with the DK or just group them up with Ring of Peace and stuff. Peace and Prosperity is a decent talent because it allows you to like knock mobs more frequently. It's a reduction on your CC, which is always good. Now, the more notable thing is Detox. Detox is obviously really strong in specific dungeons like Arakara, but there really aren't any poisons anywhere else outside of like Lethargic Venom from Floodgate, but it's only if you ever pull like a spider on accident, which, again, rarely happens in coordinated runs. Everything else is really standard, though. I would say if you're going to trade things around, like Improved Touch of Death is kind of okay for like pure damage gain because of Fatal Touch, but this is not a common talent you'll see people be playing. So yeah. I don't really know why people are running Clash. Clash is great because it roots mobs, but the root will break on damage, which it didn't used to. So I don't know. Monksy's playing it, and I wonder if that like has this effect where people will see that happening and then people start running it but don't know why. I see that even Dorky's running it too, so I'm not quite sure. I haven't found great uses for Clash outside of like Gambit or halls when like mobs are fleeing, specifically the groundskeepers and the smaller Murlocs, specifically actually any of the Murlocs. But even then, again, the root breaks on damage, so it doesn't have that much of an effect. I guess that's another way to interrupt casts too. But moving into the class tree though, we've seen a massive shift. Obviously, a lot of players have moved away from playing Rushing Jadewind. Special Delivery, and they have opted into Rushing Jadewind, and they're no longer playing Breath. Poe and Affinity are still playing this, oddly enough. I think it's a mistake to play this, personally. I haven't been pushing this season yet, so I don't know if there's some secret tech, but I don't think there is. I believe the diminishing or the damage reduction you're getting from Celestial Infusion is fine enough, and maintaining this, especially not, like, Poe's not playing... Oh no, he is. It's Affinity playing a Scalding. That's a cook. That's a cook for sure. If Affinity is watching this, I'm sorry, but You might be a little overcooked. But we have seen a large shift to the right side of the tree. This has mostly been due to our rework. Having access to Walk with the Ox is a massive damage increase. Nizao is also a massive DR now. You can also pair him with Weapons of Order. You're playing Shado-pan and Call to Arms not Call to Arms, Chi Surge for cooldown reduction, giving you more uptime on not only Weapons of Order, but also your cow. Your cow is a massive 40, it's like loosely like a 30% DR, and you can heal it. And you could play the knockup, but no one is, because the knockup is really, really bad. We've seen a shift away from Ox Stance. Ox Stance isn't really required anymore because of how powerful Zen State is. So I would say if you are going to look for a talent build, this is super standard. You just play every single talent point that's here. Most of the time you can play Tranquil, but there are some players like Monksy who are playing Quicksip. Quicksip is really strong. I think this is an underrated talent in the start of the tree. The main problem is that it's extremely expensive, but oftentimes, depending on how often you cast Tranquil Spirit and stuff, it could be a slight increase in survivability when you're playing Quicksip versus Tranquil. Outside of that, though, this build is like locked in. I don't think it's going to be changing all that much. There's not really any point playing the right side of the tree. Again, I think Charred Passions is a little cooked. This build also is applicable to both Shado-pan and Master of Harmony, so you're just going to play whichever one you prefer. And that's the build. In terms of gear, obviously, like the standout items I'm going to kind of point out are going to mostly be like trinkets and crafts. So most players ended up crafting the Adrenal Surge clasp. This is just such a powerful effect. So it gives us 4.7k agility. And when you pair it on something like the rune crafted armbands or rune branded armbands, this is going to double the effect. So you're almost gaining like 9,500 agility. And this has roughly a 30 to 35% uptime in combat. And I don't know if I can really explain how powerful that is. Obviously, there's some people who are playing the durable information securing container. Most likely it's because they were holding onto their crafts, or what they ended up doing is they ended up like crafting a weapon of some sort, like an Everforged longsword, for example, or one of the staffs, but obviously not that many people have crafted staffs. When it comes to crafting, you can see here that most people are playing Adrenaline Writhing. So if you are someone who plays Mythic Plus pretty seriously, this is the combination you want to get set up with pretty early on. The Adrenal Surge class comes with crit and verse on it. If you're starting to hit the verse and or crit diminishing return, you can change your Writhing Armor brand to one of those two stats to mastery. Enchants are mostly the same. We're not seeing anything crazy here. Your fiber, you can definitely trade out based on what gear you currently have. So let's say you have really heavy like verse gear, play the precise fiber for more crit. If you have really heavy crit in your gear, swap to verse. I recommend crafting one of each so you can swap it around freely whenever you need. I don't think you really need to ever play Mastery or Haste for any reason. And make sure you're not using the shittier vendor fibers that you get from the quest line. Like, you can craft better ones from tailors. So make sure you're doing that. The last thing I want to mention are like trinkets, because I've been getting a ton of questions about like what trinkets people should be playing. Brand of Ceaseless Ire is non-negotiable for high Mythic Plus. This is doing ridiculous amounts of overall at the end of the key. It's similar to Eye of Kazan from last season. As you stay in combat, the damage and defensive value goes up, the absorbs you get, and it will diminish as you're out of combat. So it incentivizes you to pull aggressively, and it's doing like anywhere from 10 to 15% of your overall, depending on the level of the trinket, and it's doing like 10 to 12% of your overall healing, sometimes more, sometimes less, depending on the key. And then outside of that, Sephorian Pacemaker, really good. These on-use trinkets are also really good to pair with your Weapons of Order. I would say Signet has fallen out of favor a little bit. It's really good if you're playing a non-CDR like Master of Harmony build, but I would say it like now doesn't line up. Unyielding Nether Prism is probably your best bet, but the problem with this is like most agility or strength users are going to be using this trinket because it's like a Spy Master's Web from the first season for casters, but now it's for your basically melee. It's a 20-second cooldown, so you can use it pretty often. You can send it on every Exploding Keg. You can send it on every Chi Burst if you want. Most players who are playing this are probably holding it for a bigger increase on their Weapons of Order, but that means this trinket will always line up with it no matter how much CDR you get. So this is probably your best one to pair with that CD, but I would say this setup is like perfect. There aren't really any other trinkets. I would say if you can't get your hands on a Pacemaker, you can play a Nubicage from Dawnbreaker. It's another good stat stick. Unfortunately, it can proc any stat, but the uptime is really high. It's like 40-ish% give or take. But if it procs haste, obviously it's not going to be that beneficial compared to it proccing crit or mastery or verse. Weapons, Harvester's Interdiction, probably your best in slot. Most players are going to be running this. It is really good stats. It's verse mastery, and it gives you a free damage proc that ends up being roughly 0.5 to 1% damage increase in single target. Over a course of the key, it's like only like 0.2, 0.3%. So does it matter if you don't have this? Not really. Use your highest item level one, but realistically, in a perfect world, at the end of the season, you'll have one of these on the Mythic track. Outside of that, yeah, just really focus on your stat weights. Don't focus too much on the gear people are running, because people kind of run whatever they have access to, whatever they looted for. If maybe they have a Mythic track, Mama's Mega Medallion, and that's why they're playing this. Maybe they looted Mythic pants instead. Pants, ideally, you don't want because they're high haste crit, but yeah, really focus on rounding out your stats, and if you have too much haste, identify which gear has haste on it and drop whatever you can, or try to replace whatever you can. But yeah, that's pretty much it, I think. I don't know if I missed anything, but if you have any questions, leave them down below. I always enjoy doing this video. Once I start pushing, I will definitely start sharing more information once I have a better scope. I don't even think I'm in this range anymore. I don't even think I'm in top 50. I just haven't been playing. We did all of our pushing in week 1. We pushed to 3,200. We got a bunch of, I think we're Brazil 14. We have mostly 15s and a 16 on the board from week 1, and haven't touched high keys since. So I will be streaming this weekend if my group decides to push on both YouTube and on Twitch. So you can always check me out there. Anyways, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you all in the next one. Peace.